welcome back to my channel. My name is Ayelet. I am the mother of a 16-month-old and we've been practicing Montessori at home from birth. I'm also Montessori trained, and on this channel I love to share about our Montessori home. You can watch us cook together. We talk a lot about practical life and just Montessori in general. Teach a bit about Montessori on here. So thank you so much for joining. Today we are going to be jumping in to how to present a material the Montessori way. So we're going to be talking all about you have a new material and how you're going to present that to your child. So something to keep in mind when we're talking about this, I recently posted a video about what is a Montessori toy. And so with that, one thing I mentioned is a lot of Montessori toys and definitely Montessori line toys. Steve speaks about that all about that in the video I will link. But a lot of Montessori aligned toys or Montessori materials are close-ended. So when we have a close-ended material, we generally start with a very deliberate presentation. So where with an open-ended material, take blocks for example, maybe you would just hand a child a set of blocks or a set of magnet tiles or something like that. Generally, when it comes to a close-ended material, this is a material that works in one specific way, and while our child might go and experiment with other ways, which I'm going to get into later in this video, there is one purpose, and we want to introduce the child to that purpose. So in Montessori, we actually start when we're introducing a new material with a very deliberate presentation. So that presentation is what I'm going to talk about. So for example, let's take the coin drop. I've showed this one off in my last video as well. It is close-ended. There is a purpose of dropping the coin into the slot of the box. So when we first introduce this material, we will start with a presentation. So a big aspect of a presentation of a material in Montessori is to show, not tell, what we're doing, how we use the material. Baron Schmidt, who wrote some books about Montessori for parents, used the acronym, and this acronym has become very popular in Montessori spaces, SHOW. Slow, hands, omit, words. So what does that mean? That means we are going to be using slow and deliberate movements with our hands, but we're not really going to be moving our mouths. We're not really going to be talking. We're going to be using as few words as possible and likely no words at all. So when I present a material to my son, I usually don't use any words. When you're thinking about presenting material, think about the acronym SHOW. Slow hands, omit words. We want to be using slow, deliberate motions without the distraction of our words. And why do we do this? This is so that the child is focused on our hands and the material rather than our mouths and what we're saying. So when we're showing something, we want them to be focused on what we're actually doing with their hands, because that's what they're going to be doing, is they're going to be doing it with their hands. And this is very different from a lot of traditional education and maybe what you've been exposed to. So it might feel a little weird at first to sort of be silent while presenting material. So I'm going to get into some videos and show some videos of me presenting materials with my son and go through sort of how that works and why we do it that way. I'm going to show you how I presented this beading material to my son, but before I do that, I wanted to go through a few things that I think about before starting a presentation. So the first is this a material that is developmentally appropriate and that he will be interested in? And I base this on observations of his play. I've known that he's been interested in threading in general with easier threading materials, and so this one's more challenging, and I thought that he would be interested in it. The next thing I want to consider is what mood is he in? Is he hungry? Is he tired? Any of those things, it's not a good time to present a material. I want to wait until he is in a mood that he is sort of ready to do this. And at that point, I do one of two things. I either wait until he shows interest in the material, if I'll have it out on the shelf, for example, and wait until he shows interest in it, and then I present it to him. Alternatively, I might take it out and invite him to join me on the mat for a presentation. Either way, I want to make sure that he is interested in having this presentation and learning about this material now, and if he's distracted on wanting to do something else, that is fine, and I wait for another time. So here I have invited him to join me on the mat, and I'm going to present this material. So I'm using no words and going very slowly and showing him how to do it, and he is very eager to start. So I just let him do it after I put the one on. At other times, he might be less eager to start, and I will
maybe, in this example, I would beat a few more things before giving it to him. But if he is really eager to start and I've shown him, I then give him a chance to try. So here he was really interested in the material, and he really got how to do it right away. So sometimes he might take a little longer to get it, or he might experiment with it first, but here he really started doing it that way right away. And so I stay close at first and make sure that he doesn't need any help, and just wait there, and then I will take a step back. And I still don't, leave or anything. I stay in the vicinity because I still want to be a presence for him if he wants to interact, or if he wants to, ask, look to me for anything. I still want to be nearby, but I take a step back to just sort of make sure I'm not hovering and let him kind of experiment more with the material. And here he's very engaged with the material and really focused on that. Sometimes he will look to me and get excited about something, and I always either give him a smile or say you did it or something like that when he's looking to me for that excitement. But it really depends. So I like to stay in the area just to make sure that if he wants to interact, I'm there.
Let me show you.
So here's another demonstration I did. This is a Q-tip posting material. So I'm again showing slow hands, omitting words, showing it to him, and then I'm giving him a chance to try it. One other thing of note is usually we present materials from left to right. This is to model the way that reading is done, so from top to bottom, left to right, which could be different in a different language. It's just something to keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes he will do something different than how I modeled the material, and I don't step in at this point. I let him continue doing that. I would only step in if something was dangerous or destructive. Otherwise, I just make a note to present it again at a later point. Often, though, he experiments a bit and then comes back to doing it how I modeled.
One other thing to keep in mind when you're presenting a material is to not necessarily show it as something super easy. So I said we're working deliberately, but we also might be working through and showing some struggle. So let me show a puzzle. He's actually just did his puzzle. So say I have this piece, and I'm working through where this piece goes. So when I'm presenting it, I am not going to go and just put it in right here. Even going slowly, it's hard doing backwards. That would not be how I would present this material. So how I would present this material would be to go slowly again, but to try in different spots, and then put it in after I've tried in multiple spots. And the reason is that's something he's going to be doing when he's using this material. He is not going to just go and put it straight in the spot. So because I have modeled it that way, he now goes and he tries the different spots, and he is able to find where it goes, which I'm going to show a video of right after this.
So here you can see him trying this puzzle piece in that spot, seeing it doesn't fit, and then moving to putting it in the spot where it does fit. Here you can see with this piece, he actually puts it directly in because he's had a lot of practice discriminating the different sizes, but he still does try them out in different places, and I think that was a great way to start because it gave him a lot of opportunities to figure out where they go and to have a way to problem solve if he doesn't know exactly where they go right away.
So another part of that is modeling frustration. And that's something that is actually a really useful skill or useful sort of technique in certain scenarios. So I don't necessarily do this right away, but say a child is struggling with a material. If I'm sort of reintroducing it, I'm doing a new presentation because it's just not working, I might show a struggle. So let's take the puzzle. It might even, really be trying to get it in and just showing how, showing frustration tolerance and showing like that struggle and finally get it in. And that's something that can help your child it's modeling frustration tolerance, and it can help them build their own frustration tolerance. So that's just another thing to keep in mind that can be really useful when you're presenting a material. Along those lines as well, say I am presenting a pouring activity. So one thing that I actually will do while doing that likely is I will intentionally spill a little bit of water And why do I do that? I do that so that I can model the next step of that, which is wiping up the spill. So your child's going to, when they're first pouring, probably spill some water or some beans or some cereal or whatever it is they're pouring. So when you do that presentation and you intentionally spill a little, you then show how to clean it up. So you show with the rag, or you show, sweeping it up if it's, cereal on the floor or whatever. And this allows the child to sort of see that full sequence of what happens when something spills. And that's just something that's so helpful in them understanding that and really modeling that as well. And it shows that it's okay if you don't get it perfectly right the first time. So I'm going to do a little recap of some of the tips to keep in mind when you are presenting a new material. So the first is that acronym I told you about: show, slow hands, omit words. It's a very useful one to remember. To just think about being slow, being deliberate, and using our hands rather than our mouths to introduce material. Another thing to keep in mind is that deliberate presentation that you do in Montessori, but then that you can step back and let the child explore. And if you can tell they're asking for help or they really sort of don't have any idea where to start, you can go and you can sort of help them and give as little help as possible, but as much as is necessary. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is it is okay to sort of go back and try again and to give a little bit of support. But in general, if they're using a material in a way that is maybe not how we introduced it, that's okay. As long as it's not dangerous or destructive or anything like that, I let him explore with how he's exploring, let him do his thing. And often he'll come back and he'll start doing it the way that I'd originally presented. It just might take a little bit longer. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that this is your opportunity, once you've presented it, and once the child is really engaged in the material, to take a step back. And that's really a tip for independent play in general, is taking that step back there when they're engaged in the material and not interrupting. Not interrupting is such an important part of the Montessori philosophy, is that if a child is happily engaged in a material, let them be. Of course, again, with the caveat of anything being dangerous, being destructive, anything like that. But in general, if they're using the material wrong, but they're happily engaged and they're occupied with it, let them be. Another final thing to keep in mind, as always, is every child is different and you really want to observe your own child. So while I do recommend using as few words as necessary so that you can sort of have the focus be on your hands, there might be some children who do better with a bit more verbal feedback, and some who do better with less, and that can change with age for different kids. But this principle does generally apply, that we want to focus more on our actions than our words. But of course, always adapt it to your own child and really observe and follow the child in front of you. So I hope those tips are helpful. There are several different ones, from sort of just how to present a material to some other tips on really how to do specific ones and things like that. And I hope that those tips are helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more about Montessori, more about our home. We do cooking videos and all sorts of things like that. If you have any questions, please drop them below. Thank you so much. Have a good day.